What is beauty? Who decides what is beautiful? Who decides what clothes are stylish or worth wearing? Where did you learn about these concepts? These not-so-easy questions were put on us to answer.
Hi, I'm Abigail Rens.
I'm Hanan Tuffaha.
I'm Tyler Eld.
And I'm Bilton. We look through the works of African American literature to see how beauty standards further affect minority communities in America, interviewed young women to get a fresh angle on the issues affecting adolescents, and examined other academic sources on standards of beauty, both past and present. But to start, let's take a step back and simply raise the question, how are beauty standards established in the first place?
Author Leah Hofel writes, "Today's ideal is that of a rather slim woman with an hourglass figure, but this has not always been so. One can observe that in times when food was scarce and rather a luxury, rounded figures were preferred. Each epoch has its own conception of a beautiful woman. This suggests that beauty standards are based mainly on culture and can change greatly over time. There is also evidence that suggests beauty standards are designed to be unattainable from the start.
Beauty standards are essentially made to be unattainable by the masses. The majority of the population will not be able to adhere to these beauty standards. And if the trait becomes more popular, the standards will shift to something more rare. Shulamith Firestone, a radical feminist and author, says, "Every society has promoted a certain ideal of beauty over all others. What that ideal is unimportant, for any ideal leaves the majority out. Ideals, by definition, are modeled on rare qualities. Though the standards are made impossible to reach, we are made to feel inadequate when we don't meet them. This habitual cycle of thinking causes a tremendous amount of emotional damage within our lives, often without us even noticing."
Unfortunately, these unattainable standards can become the absolute norm. Jhumpa Lahiri's short story, Sexy, depicts a young woman who slowly grows aware of the toxic beauty standard she holds herself to. She realizes this only after hearing a young boy's definition of the word sexy as he sees it. His innocent perspective on the issue shows the reader how toxic standards can become the norm for many. Lahiri shows that, as a culture, we may need an awakening to this fact.
Here's a real-life example of how people, particularly Black women, give in to beauty standards.
In two separate studies conducted by Michael Hughes and Bradley Hurdle in 1990 and Verna Keith and Cedric Herring in 1991, it was reported that a lighter skin tone was believed to be a predictor of higher education, a better occupation, and higher socioeconomic class. African American natural hair was decided to be unruly and unprofessional by white American beauty standards. This led most women of color to detest their natural hair and use various methods to emulate straight Caucasian hair. A study found that 33% of the ads in magazines catered towards women of color were promoting hair products meant to straighten natural ethnic hair.
Speaking of Black women's natural hair, there have been many instances in the beauty industry where a message of inadequacy is pushed onto Black women in relation to their hair. Starting from a young age, little Black girls notice how they are being represented, if they are being represented at all. Often, these representations are lacking inclusivity of the Black community as a whole. For example, in Essence, a magazine targeted for Black women, there is an excessive amount of light-skinned, straight-haired models when compared to the dark-skinned, natural hair models who are scarcely shown. This not only passively pushes the idea that dark-skinned, natural-haired women aren't capable of promoting beauty products, but it also can lead to the thought that dark-skinned women are not beautiful. This lack of representation isolates a whole group of Black women from having their beauty normalized and thus creates insecurities in their hair, which they then pass down to younger generations. These images of straight-haired beauty saturate the media and creates a longing by some Black women and children to have this straight hair. The discrepancy between the natural hair that they have and the straight hair that they may desire oftentimes affects their self-esteem negatively. Even if a black woman wants to embrace her natural hair, she's not only battling beauty standards, but she's dealing with the lack of information on how to care for her hair because of such. Many salons don't know how to take care of natural hair, and the ones that do are scarce, which makes it seem like having straight hair is more practical and easier to care for. All of these reasons, and many more, are why black women have been losing touch with hair as an important part of their culture.
The intense beauty standards and expectations placed specifically upon women of color goes much deeper than just hairstyles and can have serious impacts on the mental health and lives of these women.
In a study by JSTOR on the Maasai group from Kenya, an overwhelming majority, about 72.8%, were not satisfied with the way society defines beauty for black women. These women, however, did notice a difference between their own standard of beauty and that of society, and could resist the Western beauty standards pushed onto them. This is not to say, though, that the women surveyed were completely happy with themselves. A whopping 46% of the women wished they were skinnier, 32% were displeased with the texture of their hair, and 26.7% did not like the way they looked overall. With more inclusion of different skin tones, hair textures, and body types on TV, in magazines, and on the runway, it is likely that these numbers would be much, much lower. To receive more insight on this, I conducted an interview with my close friend Naya, a 20-year-old black college student from Wisconsin. I asked, "What does beauty mean to you?" Her reply was, "There's two types of beauty to me. There's inner beauty and then there's outer beauty. In both instances, it refers to something being pretty. With outer beauty, it's what's aesthetically pleasing, and inner beauty refers to goodness." Much like the women in the study mentioned before, Naya can tell the difference between aesthetic beauty and inner beauty, despite society's constant pressure that all women have to be tall, blonde, white, blue-eyed, and skinny. These standards, however, have negatively affected her self-esteem in the past. When asked how societal beauty standards have affected her, Naya answered, "Growing up, I used to love how I looked. I lived in Chicago and then Milwaukee, which were predominantly black areas, so I viewed my features as normal and beautiful. So many people had my complexion, my hair, and on TV I saw my features also, since I watched 90s black sitcoms. Around 10, I ended up moving to a mostly white neighborhood, and I felt different. In my new neighborhood, European features were more common, and when people talked about a girl being beautiful, they'd mention her light-colored hair or eyes. People would make racist comments about how I look, and I started to be self-conscious in my dark skin and curly hair, and I began to buy relaxers. I would only get compliments when my hair was straight, and this fueled an unhealthy obsession with wanting to be society's version of beautiful. Like many black women in America, Naya succumbed to the pressures of a white-obsessed society. This led to her losing confidence in the way she looked, and she attempted to conform to white standards by straightening her hair. The topic of beauty standards and their effects on young black girls is prevalent in many notable African American works. In Toni Morrison's novel, The Bluest Eye, 11-year-old Pecola Breedlove is overcome by her desire for blue eyes to be beautiful. Reading about Pecola Breedlove's struggles can show women that attaining attractiveness in the eyes of society does not always lead to being happy within oneself.
A clear example of the effects of beauty standards on young girls is portrayed in the novel The Bluest Eye by African-American female author and activist Toni Morrison. A young girl named Pecola Breedlove is treated awfully and abused by society and her family, and is often referred to as ugly compared to American beauty standards. In order to conform to society, she persistently yearns for blue eyes. Pecola's fascination with obtaining blue eyes eventually drove her mad and essentially ruined her life. At the end of the novel, Morrison uses marigolds being unable to grow in the soil of their town as a metaphor for the fact that young African American girls are unable to thrive and grow in the world around them because of societal standards implemented onto them.
There are unfortunately many examples of this standard in real life.
In the article America's Enduring Caste System by Isabel Wilkerson, Wilkerson explains the nature of caste systems, saying that a caste system centers the dominant caste as the sun around which all other castes revolve, and defines it as the default setting standard of normalcy, intellect, and beauty, against which all others are measured, ranked in descending order by their physiological proximity to the dominant caste. For the US, our dominant caste is of course white men, and specifically for beauty, blonde-haired, blue-eyed Caucasians. As mentioned by Wilkerson, the further away from this default setting, the lower the ranking in the caste. Sadly, this translates into the lighter your skin and the lighter your eyes, the more beautiful you are. A great example of how this affected society is the use of marrying white men by slaves to make their children more white than they are.
Anti-Black societal standards date all the way back to the time of slavery. Black women would have kids with white men to create a whiter family. Their kids would then marry white people and reproduce, and so on, in order to eliminate any trace of blackness in their family and culture. One example would be of a black enslaved woman named Sally Hemings, who had 6 children with her slave master, Thomas Jefferson. In Andrew Mitchell Davenport's article, Race is the American Fiction, one man goes to visit Monticello in 1796 and claims that he saw, I quote, slaves who neither in point of color nor features showed the least trace of their original descent. During this period, white people were the slave owners while black people were the slaves, therefore making the white race the dominant one. The narrator of the article then visits Monticello in 2016 and he notices the same thing, stating, "A family directly before me looked white at first glance, but they are descendants of Sally and Tom." White is considered the dominant race, and the whiter you are, the more beautiful and powerful you are in society. This is why mixed women are presented more in magazines and on TV than dark-skinned black girls. Since they are at least part white, they are shown to be superior to darker-skinned women and more worthy of being shown to the world. These unattainable standards of whiteness, or having lighter skin as a means of being prettier, causes young black girls to dislike their skin and wish they could change it.
This system is defied by many celebrities today, though.
In a 1999 issue of Jet magazine, Alfre Woodard talks about how her beauty does not fit the standards set in Hollywood, going as far to say that when auditions called for pretty black girls, she would turn them down one at a time. Woodard tells a sad but true story about how she did not know that she was pretty until a trip to Africa. Due to American beauty standards, Woodard's brown skin made her and still makes her feel blind to her own beauty. In the article, she goes on to say that she doesn't feel like a beautiful American woman. This statement is proof that we must change our societal norms and accept everyone for who they are. Woodard ends the article by stating, "You just realize everybody's beautiful if they just got to the right place." Such an eloquent statement could not be more true. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I went on to interview my sister, a 21-year-old female, on what she thinks of our beauty standards.
I think in a way, if this makes sense, beauty standards and having one type of body or one type makeup look or hair look that we all want to have makes us all look more similar. And I think it takes away from the diversity that women and men all have within their natural faces. I think if we're all trying to achieve that exact same eyebrow, that exact same lip, I think it makes our diversity and beauty of looking different go away because we're all trying to look like the same thing. I think one standard that's really affected me is just the fact that girls always are wearing makeup and girls always want to wear makeup because it makes them look, I don't know if it's better or if it makes them all look more feminine, but it kind of got to a point where I didn't even want to see anyone when I didn't have makeup on because I didn't feel comfortable. And like it took a lot of years to get past that, but I think it's a potentially dangerous thing because you can use makeup to like really lose sight of what you actually look like, and you have to like be comfortable with what you look like under all like the makeup and cover up.
To show that many young women are affected by these standards, we interviewed another.
In an interview with Emily Rens, a former student in college at Colorado University Boulder, she opened up to me about feeling as though everything was a competition. Emily said, "I felt like every time I went outside, I needed to look better than everyone else, and it seemed like everyone else was thinking the same thing. It was clear that even within the groups of friends, everyone had a weird sense of resentment and jealousy towards each other." Emily goes on to explain how she had to delete her social media on multiple occasions simply to stop herself from comparing her to others. Emily ended up leaving Boulder and moving back home after feeling overwhelmed by the pressure around her. Though society as a whole continues to have deep-rooted issues based upon beauty standards, today we do see large steps being made towards a more inclusive and diverse definition of beauty.
This change can be seen growing in the fashion industry. Author Jessica B. Matlin says, "It's a trend that can be seen across the beauty industry. Revlon, once a territory of glamazons like Cindy and Claudia Schiffer, now has a roster of spokeswomen that reads more like the guest list of a Golden Globes after party, a hodgepodge of bona fide A-listers, Susan Sarandon and Julianne Moore, and rising actresses Kate Bosworth and Eva Mendes. Scarlett Johansson, fresh off her appearance in Calvin Klein's Eternity Moment ads, was recently named one of the faces of L'Oreal Paris, along with Penelope Cruz. And Ashley Judd's cozy contract with American Beauty was ultimately sealed by her down-home appeal, says President Jane Hudis. The era of the supermodel is over, says Hudis. Women want something deeper. This suggests a positive change in the fashion industry, moving towards models of great artistic accomplishment, such as Scarlett Johansson. This growing awareness in the fashion industry can also affect social media as well.
In the academic journal, Are We There Yet? Progress in Depicting Diverse Images of Beauty in Instagram's Body Positivity Movement, the authors analyzed a study on the content of posts that included #BodyPositivity. They state that in the study, they found that in contrast to the proposed criticisms of body-positive accounts, the majority of the posts included broad conceptualizations of beauty by depicting bodies with diverse sizes and physical attributes that diverged from current societal beauty standards. For example, stomach rolls, cellulite, and skin imperfections. This is consistent with the main idea of body positivity, that everyone should be happy with their body and accept its imperfections. A movement like this is great for combating the poor mental health that beauty standards can cause. It was said that recent research demonstrates that social media use in general, and photo-based activities in particular, are linked to body dissatisfaction and disordered eating among adolescents and young adults. The journal concluded that the Instagram community in general promotes acceptance of a broader range of body types, but does still not represent the general population. Perhaps as we progress even further with our beauty standards in the future, the general population will have more representation on Instagram. If more people are more accepting on Instagram, then more people will be more accepting in real life.
Unlike in the media or in popular culture, the reality is that beauty is subjective. We should all learn to accept ourselves and others, in spite of beauty standards' ability to create self-doubt and a lack of confidence. Even in the communities that are further removed from American beauty standards, self-acceptance is the road out. When living in the wake of widespread standards of beauty, we must look inwards and create our own standards of beauty. So thanks for watching, and remember, don't pay attention to those toxic beauty standards, because beauty is in the eye of the beholder.